Just ensure your phones are on vibrate or silent, right? Ready? All right, ladies and gentlemen of the media, a very good morning and welcome to this first press conference of the Honorable Joseph Hamilton, the Minister of Labor. Of course, the press conference, because of the COVID-19, are going to be virtual at this point in time. However, Minister, what we have is the members of the press coming in via Zoom, so they will be able to ask their questions as we get to that point. As it is now, the Honorable Minister will make some opening comments, after which we will ask you to, first and foremost, state your name and the media house you're representing before you ask your questions. Maybe we say 2 questions per media house in the initial stages, and maybe after that, based on the availability of time, we may take additional questions. Minister, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Eddie, and thank you very much, members of the media. I think it's a useful exercise to engage you so that you can ask me the questions and I can give answers to you as regards what has been happening over the last week, seeking to reestablish a Ministry of Labor. Just for background purposes, we have 6 programs, and 5 of the programs, they were run out of the building at Cornell Street. Only the Labor Department is at the Brick Dam building there, and the intention in the first instance is to get everybody actually around in the same place. We have to construct departments that do not exist. HR, IT, procurement, accounting department, all of those, these we have to do, because the Labor Department, quote unquote, ministry was subsumed under the Human Services Department, and they look after all their financial issues. And so at the level of the budget that is being prepared, the financial administration of the Ministry of Labor will still be done for the 2 months, August and September, under the Ministry of Social Protection. And we will delink that, as for the budget purposes, October, November, and going on. And so we have to construct all of these departments. Some people will be coming over from Human Services to be part of the new team that we will build. On the side of engagement with stakeholders, that has already started. I have already met the 2 umbrella trade union bodies, FATUG and GTUC, KG. We have had meeting that had to be adjourned with the Private Sector Commission. That is the same day when the emergency came up about the issue about the COVID-19 matter. And so we have to re-engage them. I can tell you this afternoon I will lead a government delegation to have a conversation with RUSAL to find out about what is the status regarding that company in Guyana and the workers. The 3 pillars of the Labor Ministry, as I outline it, would be: 1, capacity building of our workers in the state agencies in the first instance and the wider field. That means we'll have to retool the Board of Industrial Training and to develop it, expand it so that it has a reach across the length and breadth of Guyana, coastal and regional. And we have to do collaborative programs with institutions that already exist. I know that the CEO of the BIT, I've tasked him to engage Mr. English at the Critchlow Labour College so that they can start having a conversation. Because when I had a meeting with GTUC, I proposed that perhaps we can collaborate together, that is BIT and Critchlow Labour College, and that conversation has already started. And I've learned about several other places that they have training programs that I have sought to find out from them how they can expand them, do these programs to include more people I plan to have a conversation with the prison service leadership so that we can extend training programs to young men and women who found themselves on the wrong side of the law. So that perhaps, my thoughts are, perhaps we can put in place what I call a project to allow for when they return to society, as they say, they can be meaningfully engaged and employed. So that is on the side of capacity building. Human development programs, collaboration with health and housing to ensure that all our workers are properly housed and they receive proper health care. And thirdly, the protection of the rights of workers. We have already engaged, as I said, private sector organizations. This afternoon, we will engage RUSAL, as I said earlier. I plan to have a conversation with Troy Resources and Guyana Goldfields to get an understanding of what is happening with our workers. And I plan to engage all the companies that are in Guyana that are involved in the oil and gas industry, whether they are subsidiary, whether they are contractor, whether they are the big ones like ExxonMobil, all of them I will gather around a table to speak to them about what are our expectations of Guyanese people and what the government expectations from them are. As indicated by the Vice President not so long ago, last week, we would allow to ensure that they come to invest, they make their money, returns on their investment. But we will ensure that Guyanese people will not be taken advantage of. I have heard a lot of stories in the oil and gas sector. I wouldn't want to, put them before the public at the moment until I engage these companies to get the perspective from them. But I would seek to say to them that, listen, simply, as I understand it, you cannot have a Trinidadian cook or baker earning 10 times more than a Guyanese cook or baker. It's the same flour they're needing. As simple as that. I mean, I could understand technical positions until we have built capacity. But comparable jobs must have comparable pay. That is a fundamental issue with these companies, because I have all kind of second issue. I have heard where they give contracts to our people that stipulate they cannot be unionized. I mean, once you operate in this space, the Constitution says people are allowed to participate and to establish organizations to be part of. And so those two fundamental issues, I would engage the oil and gas companies to have an understanding and to put before them what are our expectations, those that are in the mining and forestry and wherever they are. The long and short of all of it, Guyanese citizens, workers, we will not allow them to take expatriate companies or local companies to take advantage of the people. And that is a fundamental issue. And we will utilize the law to ensure that all of these companies respect the law and Constitution and our people. Because as I understand it, there presently, we have enough stipulation in the labor law to ensure that people don't take advantage on persons who work with them, whether they're local companies or whether they're overseas companies. I have meetings planned with PSU, GAU on their own, Guyana Manufacturing Service Association, GGDMA, Women Miners Association, and others. Some visitation I will start. My first visitation on Friday afternoon will be the Iflot Sugar Estate. And whilst I'm over there, I would seek to deal with a matter that is burning across the country, but I'm told more pronounced over there. These security companies that have people working and they're yet to pay them 2-3 months, they've passed. And their excuse is that they're waiting on the government to pay them. The employees, they should have that is your problem with the government. You have people working for you, you need to pay them weekly or monthly, whatever the agreement. And so I would stop at the office of one of the companies over there who are in breach, and I would seek to say to them, you have to pay these people. You cannot. So the visitation will start, as I said, and I will continue engagement with all the stakeholders for them to have a clear understanding as to what the outlook and the vision going forward of the Labor Ministry that is to be established.
Thank you very much, Minister Hamilton. We will now open the floor for questions. Like I said earlier, what you will first do is to indicate your name and the media house you representing, and we'll give you a chance to maybe ask 2 questions in the initial stages, and maybe once time permit, we can probably take some other questions. So the floor is now open for questions.
Good morning. David Pupana, Starbuck here.
Go ahead, David. I'm seeing that
Minister, my question is, I've actually joined late, but could you say what is your position on the entire Rousseau situation
we're not getting
that
any
has
sound
been
in
happening?
here. I'm not too sure if David is asking a question or not.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Are you guys hearing David out there?
I can hear
David,
you guys.
your microphone is muted. Just check. And
No, it's not muted. I can hear you guys.
All right. Any other question besides David in the meantime, as we await maybe to have him sort his microphone out? I'm not seeing. Any other questions?
Can you guys hear me
Anybody
now?
else? I see David's microphone is not muted. Could you say whether he's getting some difficulties getting his question or questions in?
I can hear you guys. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Raymond, would you like to ask a question and see your video is on?
Good morning. Tamika Garnett from the Guyana Chronicle. Can you guys hear me?
All right. While you guys are trying to sort the issue of the audio and maybe video for the media houses, what I can probably do in the interim to ensure that we get the questions in that are necessary, maybe I give you a number where you can WhatsApp your questions and I just read them out to the minister. In the meantime, we're trying to sort this out. So you can send your questions to 658-7999. 658-7999, and maybe I can pass those questions to the minister in the interim while the guys are trying to sort the whole issue of your audio and so forth out. So 658-7999 in the interim, if there are any questions. Is Samuel trying to come in? I'm not too sure why we're having that difficulty, guys, with getting the audio. I'm seeing everybody muted, so I suspect they're muting. So maybe you can mute them here and see if Tamika, I think is trying to get a question in.
Hello?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
There's nothing coming in here, right? So we can't hear. No, no, we're not hearing anything there. All right, so the audio is now on, right? So Tamika, you want to go again if you're trying to ask a question?
You guys can hear me now?
Yes, we're hearing you.
All
All
right,
right,
great.
great.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Tamika
Tamika
Garnett from the
Garnett from the
Guyana
Guyana
Chronicle.
Chronicle.
My
My
question is
question is
specifically
specifically
about the
about the
situation with the
situation with the
security
security
guards, as
guards,
the
as the
minister
minister
actually
actually
broached
broached
some
some
aspects of
aspects
it.
of it.
Now, the
Now, the
situation has been
situation has
going
been
on
going on
continuously for
continuously for
years. I know
years.
about
I
it
know
because I
about it because
cover
I
it
cover it
regularly.
regularly.
Now,
Now,
when you
when you
speak with
speak with
many of the
many of the
security
security
guards, they're
guards, they're
very
very
interested
interested
in
in
starting a
starting a
union.
union.
I did
I
speak
did
to the
speak to the
last
last
minister
minister
about
about
how these
how these
guards can go
guards can go
about it.
about
I
it. I
don't think
don't
I
think I
got proper
got proper
details.
details.
Like
Like
I'm
he,
not
I'm
sure
not
if he
sure
knew
if he knew
exactly how
exactly
they should
how
go
they should
about
go
it. He
about it. He
mentioned
mentioned
security
security
association. He even
association. He
said
even
that
said
there
that
is
there is
already a
already a
union that they
union
could
that they could
join.
join.
I was
I was
never able
never
to
able to
locate the
locate the
union.
union.
Can you
Can
give
you give
any
any
light to that?
light to
And
that? And
as well,
as
the
well, the
employees are
employees
also
are also
scared
scared
because
because
they're
they're
wondering
wondering how
if the
if the
process could be
process
one
could be
that could
one
be
that could be
somewhat
somewhat
anonymous.
anonymous,
Because
because
I do
I
know of
do know of
cases where
cases where
security guards
security
have
guards
been
have been
fired if
fired
they
if they
even
even
try to
try to
defend
defend
themselves
themselves
against
against
any
any
situation,
situation,
particularly
particularly
with
with
the
the
salary.
salary.
The
The
last time I
last time
spoke
I
to some
spoke to some
security
security
guards,
guards,
only one
only one
security guard
security
was
guard
willing
was
to
willing
give
to
me
give
his
me his
name,
name,
and that
and that
security guard was
security guard was
subsequently
subsequently
fired a few
fired a
weeks
few weeks
later.
later.
So,
So,
what can you
what can
say
you
to
say to
these
these
employees, the
employees, the
security
security
guards, on
guards,
how
on
they
how
can
they
go
can go
about
about
forming a
forming a
union?
union?
As I have indicated, my task is to ensure that workers are not taken advantage of. As regards the details, I can ask those persons to make contact with the labor department within the ministry. The chief labor officer is Mr. Ogle, who have all the necessary skills and experience to advise them how to get themselves unionized or form themselves into a representative organization. I would not tolerate any company, whether large or small, Guyanese or expatriate, who seek to penalize, victimize people for wanting to unionize themselves or form an organization. This morning, I walked with the Guyana Constitution, and I plan to walk with it at every meeting I go with companies, so that I can read that they understand the rights of workers. Maybe some of them don't understand. The rights of workers to associate, to participate in the organizations. And so, Tamika, I would say this. The persons that you might have engaged in the past, if you still have information and details of them, ask them to come to me, and I am sure that we can seek to deal with this pressing matter. As I said not so long ago, when I visit IFLOT on Friday, I will go to the office or the Region 3 office of the company that presently have people salary not paid to them 2 and 3 months, as I understand it. And several persons in the last couple of days since I have become minister, family, friends, wives of people have engaged me via WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever, to say that this is the position. And that company I will engage like all the other companies, and I would attempt to inform security guards or any set of workers, wherever they work, who want to form workers' representative organizations or a union or be part of an existing union, that I would ensure that I will protect their rights. No set of employer would seek to deny them that constitutional and human rights. So that is my commitment to the workers of Guyana. And as I have said, I've already engaged private sector organizations, and I will continue to do that. And the same things I'm saying publicly, I have said that to them, and I will continue to say that to them. I will say that to Rusal this afternoon. I will say that to Guyana Goldfields and Troy, and for whoever, I will say that to them. You will not take advantage on Guyanese workers. As regards the issue about not being paid properly, there is a minimum wage established by the government, and therefore no one should be working for under that minimum wage because it was established via regulation and in law. And anyone who at this moment are paying people under the minimum wage, they're breaking the law. And there are penalties within the labor law that we can utilize to address those matters. And so, Tamika, these are early days yet. And I can say to you that the government that I represent, our mandate is clear as regard representing the interests of the Guyanese people and the workers of Guyana. And you would have heard that outlined by the Vice President dealing with specific issues just last week, Thursday or Friday or thereabout.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think could we have anybody else wants to come in? Just
Yeah,
on David. Yes, go ahead.
Minister, good morning.
Morning, sir.
You touched briefly on this. My question is,
David, the quality. If I can interrupt you, the quality of your audio, David, the quality of your audio is pretty poor.
is it better now?
There is something giving a feedback there. All right, so I have your question here, David. You sent me your question. And Minister, David's question is, what is your take on the Rusal workers' dilemma? And I think you've attempted to address just now, but maybe you need some more details.
As I said, David, I don't want to pronounce or comment until I engage Rusal because I just know the Rusal matter following it in the press as a public official in the first instance, just as an MP, and as a citizen. Wanting to understand the matter, that is the reason why in the second week, being minister, Rusal will be around the table with us. And to tell you that I will be leading a team that consists of officials from the Natural Resources Ministry. The minister who was the point person in this is otherwise engaged at the 3 o'clock this afternoon. And so he has asked me to lead the delegation that will be reaching with Rusal this afternoon. And when we finish that meeting at 3 o'clock, I can say to you that I will make the details and decisions public so that the media and all Guyana can follow, follow from the perspective of Rusal what is the story as they understand it. But I want to, before I get to the workers, deal with the fact of whether Rusal is still in Guyana or out of Guyana. That's a question that is up in the air. People have different views on it. So I didn't want to utilize anyone's views. I want Rusal to say that to us, to the Labor Ministry and the Natural Resources Ministry, so that we can be guided. Because I would suspect, David, you agree with me, if Rusal says that they're not anymore in Guyana as an investor, the conversation in large measure about the workers is a mute conversation. But if they say that they are an investor that is continuing in Guyana, then the game plan, it has to be different than what it was over the last several years, vis-a-vis them and the workers of Guyana.
Thanks, Minister. I know, Dennis, you wanted to ask some questions, and your suggestion, I certain you can probably call the number that I gave just on 658-7999. I put it on speaker so the public as well as the minister can hear your questions.
I have a question.
Kristen? Okay,
Yes,
you go
yes.
ahead. You go ahead.
Kristen Josiah from NCN News. Minister, what is your game plan, as you said, or strategy in addressing the issue of child labor in Guyana? I just wanted to know if you have a specific new strategy to address that ongoing issue in Guyana.
The point is, Christian, is that there is a strategy as regards the law. The point is whether at the level of the departments, ministry. I don't know. The thing is, in the first instance, all of us for the last 5 years, we don't know what this thing was. So that was the issue. We had a minister, I suspect, unheard of in any part of the world, a minister manning a department. I mean, and I can give, examples of so many things in the last couple of days that I don't want to get into today as regard the deficiencies and the inefficiencies. But I have had conversations with the senior functionaries of the ministry, the 6 department heads, and I have spoken to them about the mandate of the Labor Department. I have been engaging the Chief Labor Officer, and as far as I know, what has not been happening is utilizing the law to deal with the issue of child labor. And that we have to robustly deal with. So the laws are there, Christian. I suspect the strategy is there. But it's whether there was political will and there was commitment at the level of senior functionaries who are to police the laws that exist. That we have to retool and to ensure that children are protected from exploitation, utilizing the law, and to make examples of persons. Because as I understand it, in the labor law, there are penalties that even speaks to prison time. The question is, perhaps we might have to utilize the law to begin with. Because, many people who talk a lot and do a lot of things, they don't like prison. And that might be the deterrent to ensure that people comply, utilize the labor law. And as I understand it from the leadership of the umbrella unions, when I was speaking about that, about penalty, they said the penalties already exist. And therefore, Christian, it is policing the law and to ensure that we make people examples that will deter other people from breaking the law on this specific matter and all the other labor-related matters.
Thank you very much, Minister. I have a question here from Lekram Bagirat of Guyana Times. And he is asking, he said, Minister, you spoke about the minimum wage, and with the private sector minimum wage being just about $45,000, whether you have plans in the pipeline to advocate for maybe an increase with regards to the minimum wage in the private sector.
As I understand it, that is a matter that is outstanding. I am told that there is a tripartite committee, labor, government, and business that met, discussed this matter, and a proposal is on the table to increase that. That was since last year. For whatever reason, since that time, the tripartite committee, they have not engaged again. And therefore, I have instructed the Chief Labor Officer to urgently have that meeting convened so that the proposal that they have on the table about raising of the minimum wage in the private sector, it can be dealt with and implemented. Of course, one of the issues already raised when I engaged the private sector is the issue of intervention of COVID and how it has impacted private sector activities. When the tripartite committee meets very urgently, maybe next week, the following week, at that time, from the private sector perspective, that will be put on the table, I suspect, and we will have to discuss it and to see how best we can keep the agreement, gentleman's agreement as I understand it, that the three entities they had regarding this matter since 2019, and we bring it to a conclusion.
All right, thank you very much, Minister. I have a question here from, this is again from David, And David is asking, there has been several deaths recorded on the job in the past 2 years. The most recent being Banks DH shed collapse. Will the findings of these investigations be made public, and does you, Minister, have any plans to get companies found liable to make payments to affected employees?
Firstly, David, a couple of things. One, I can tell you that the mother of the young man who was killed in one of the mining pits, the mining company, she has already made contact with me. It is just to set up a meeting to have a discussion with her. I have indicated earlier an engagement that will have to happen with Troy Resources. You know that we have difficulties now with Region 7 and 8 going in. I would rather have the engagement with that company on site, not in Georgetown sitting around a boardroom table. Going forward, my plans are to ensure that every region, they have an occupation, health and safety officer. And every region, they have a labor officer. We will have to, I suspect, engage the regional councils to allow for them to be housed there, and to ensure that some of the things that have happened, we can see them before they happen. In the area of labor, sometimes the smoke is already there all the time. The labor department only engage when the fire is there and everybody trying to out the fire. But if you have a labor officer in the region, they would be regularly engaging employers and employees, and they would get a sense as to what is happening and the agitation and difficulties. As regards this occupation health and safety side, we will have in every region occupation health and safety officer whose duty and job will be to engage industries and every place that people work, to ensure that they can beforehand see the difficulties workers have, let us say perhaps in a sawmill, that they can advise the owner that, listen, this machine here is waiting to kill somebody or to take off their hands and their foot. Not when the man's hand or foot is taken off or when the person is dead, then everybody has an interest and we have a great investigation. So that is the plan. As regards all of these outstanding issues, I would seek to have all the details and the reports made available to me. I wouldn't want to comment on the status or what we will do or what we can do until and unless I read all of these reports that exist regarding occupation health and safety issues and the maiming or death of persons in the workplace. When I am able to do that, and I have a sense and an understanding how we should go forward, what are the strategies we should utilize, I would make that available to the public and to the media so that every person, employer and employee, media and all, you can have a sense, an understanding as to what the expectations are of the government, of companies who have workers that might be exposed to elements and things that are not good for their health and safety. And let me say this, importantly for the media and the public to note, for whatever reason, and I've had this experience at the Ministry of Health, where officers think, or thought at that time, and I suspect they still think, that their role is to engage and supervise private sector entities. And they do not pay attention to the work environment in government institutions and agencies. And that has to change. I can give you an example engaging the chief environmental officer at that time at the Ministry of Health. And he was telling me everything about DDL and Banks DIH and all the other people. And I said to him, every morning, you are driving, passing that coffee, and you pass that, what we have there, the arch. And the entrance to your work site. Every day, it is a catastrophe. It's an environmental disaster and degradation for the Ministry of Health, in the first instance, to be like that. And every day you're passing this. And you seem not to understand that you are supervising all the ministries, all the agencies. So the law is not for private sector. And we have to reorient these officers, their head, to understand that their responsibility is to the people of Guyana, and they supervise and ensure that labor standards in every entity, whether they be ministry, other government agencies, and the private sector, they pay all their attention to the private sector to see negative working conditions, and they pay no attention to the, and we have had just an experience not so long ago that you, the media and public, know about. If somebody was paying attention, they would have known that employees at the Natural Resources, GGMC Gold Board, they were exposed to lead poisoning or whatever happened there because they were using mercury in an unsafe environment. I can tell you from a personal standpoint, I have a granddaughter who suffered and had to seek medical attention for several months. But if somebody was paying attention, we would have known before all of those people were exposed. It is after all of that has happened, all the travails and tribulation, then we understood that we need to establish a building with all the features that are necessary to burn or purify gold or whatever they do utilizing mercury. We cannot operate like that. And so I hope I have answered your question in some regard, and whatever, as I said, regarding specifically the issues of people losing their life and whatever, I will, when I get those reports, I would study them, and then I would speak to the media at that time.
All right, I have a question here for Samuel Suknandan from the Demerara Waves, and Samuel is asking, past governments appear to have allowed RUSL to violate workers' rights and not recognize the GBGW as the legitimate bargaining agent. What guarantees you can give, Minister, that this will not happen again? Maybe I could give you the two other questions that I have here, so that maybe you can deal with them at the same time. Sean Embrack from News Talk Radio is asking, what guarantees can government give on the question of collective bargaining for government workers, wages and salaries, rather than no negotiations or a cosmetic process that ultimately sees an imposition of an across-the-board figure? I have one more quickly. I think this is a follow-up from, there's a follow-up here from Lekram. He's asking, can the minister expand a bit more on the nature of that proposal? I think, if you can remind me which proposal you were talking about, the minister, I think, spoke about a number of proposals. So if you can remind me, and I'll just let him answer that.
Okay, let me start off with collective bargaining. Again, I would return to the Constitution and the laws that exist, and to seek to have those implemented. As I said, I will be very shortly engaged in the Guyana, the GPSU, to hear from their perspective as to what has happened or not happened with the engagement that they had with the past government dealing with the issue of collective bargaining. And after then, I can speak to the public as to what the government position will be. Presently, I couldn't say what or how the engagement with the last government, the previous government and GPSU ended. And in the other areas, I have said to the FITOG and I have said to GTUC that what we had was a initial meeting that was not a long meeting. I have said to them, go back, sit down, list all your issues, and let us engage in what I call a mini confab, and maybe we can spend a day together, government and labor, sit down look at the issue, prioritize them, and we can seek to map a way how we resolve specific issues and put timelines to them. So there to return to me, FITUG and GTUC, so that we can together, of course, they're individual confab we will have. That is at the labor and GTUC and labor and FITUG. As regards RUSAL and its workers, again, I refer to the Constitution and the law, and I will say that to RUSAL this afternoon, like I will say to all companies, whether expatriate or local companies. Under the restructured labor ministry that I'm in, workers will not be taken advantage on. Secondly, workers will not be denied their right to form representative organizations or to be represented by union or unions of their choice. That is the policy position of the ministry, and that is the policy position of the government. And RUSAL, first I want to know whether they're in or out. It is useless I have a conversation about labor relations if they say that they will not be in Guyana anymore. We might have to be talking to somebody else who might be taking over the mining concession. I hope I have answered all the questions that were asked in that regime.
I think, Samuel is asking here when the Occupational Safety and Health Act will be revised to take account of the oil and gas sector. And Lake Ram's question about the proposal has to do with the private sector increases that you would have spoken about briefly.
Okay, let me first deal with the oil and gas intervention, occupation health and safety. That's a special project. We have several legislation that we have to amend. And I have already indicated to the Attorney General that I will be engaging him for the necessary assistance. I suspect in some instances we might have to engage external sources. As I understand it, to deal with the oil and gas industry, the issues of occupation, health, and safety issues, the ILO has already been engaged even before I arrived, and they have already made contact with me, seeking to congratulate me and seeking to I was put in motion how we move forward all of these proposals that are on the table, were on the table as regards legislation amendments and new legislation. And the oil and gas legislation coming forward, they will be very much specific to the oil and gas industry. And again, very shortly, I will be briefing the media and the Guyanese people as to where we're at, how soon we will engage with experts and consultants to advise us, and what timeline we have put on having a draft legislation that we can put out there for the public to review and for us to consult stakeholders so that we can have a bill going to the National Assembly. But the Ministry of Labor, we have an agenda set out, a legislative agenda that we will be pursuing in the new year to ensure that all of these things are refined and defined going forward in the labor sector. I think the question about the minimum wage, you wanted the person wanted to know the minimum wage proposal.
Yeah, to elaborate.
That was a question?
Yes, to elaborate on the proposal.
Okay, as I understand it, the proposal had to do with $60,000 at the first instance. That is what I am told. As I said, I just learned that from the labor organization, and I learned that from the KG, and I learned that from the Department of Labor. The question is how how soon they engage to concretize that proposal and to seek to put it in motion. As I said earlier, already from the level of the private sector, they have raised with me the issue of the impediment that is before all of us and that have caused their business to suffer. That is the public health matter that we are dealing with, the slowdown of business that resulting from that public health matter. But once the tripartite committee reaches and they review their proposal and there's a decision, I would make that available to the public.
Are there any other questions? I think Tamika is sending in her a question here, and so I'll take just these two more for now. Samuel has another question. In the context of workplace safety, what is the Ministry of Labor doing to ensure the safety of teachers at schools? Currently, many schools are registering new students, and teachers are worried that insufficient systems are in place. I don't know how much of that question may be overlapped into the Ministry of Education, but Minister, I'm sure that you can deal with some of it. All right. In the meantime, I think Tamika is sending her next question, so maybe you can deal with that one.
Yes, let me say this. As I see it, in large measure, labor has to work in conjunction with the other ministries and agencies, health, education, so that we are not saying different things. You know, the Minister of Health has outlined some policy positions, and the Minister of Education, she has outlined some policy position. But as I said earlier, one of the deficiency in the relationship is where officers that are occupational health and safety officers, labor officers, environmental protection officers, they are of the view somehow that their remit is just to engage private sector companies to ensure that they comply. I am saying that we have to reorient their thoughts that when you're a labor officer, you have a responsibility to all the workers of Guyana, whether they work in public sector or private sector. The same thing with the occupation health and safety officer. And so the issue about teachers and their safety, we would have to engage, that is health and education and labor, and to seek to jointly put together a program to put before the Guyanese people and a proposal how we would ensure teachers are safe. And I suspect the Security Ministry, Home Affairs Ministry, because we have had a lot of incidents at schools where teachers have been assaulted and all the other things have happened in schools. And therefore, holistically, we have to look at safety and security in all respect of employees, whether they're in the public sector and the private sector. And so I see going forward a holistic policy to deal with that matter after we would have engaged at the level of, because we have ours, education they have, and health they have. The point is to have everything together, consolidated, so we have what can be considered a national policy that deals specifically with it. And policy is one thing, is to police the policy. And I have already spoken to the labor officers and the occupational health and safety officers, and I have indicated to them what are my expectations. I have committed to them to give them the necessary tools that they might be lacking to ensure that they do their work efficiently and effectively, and I will hold them accountable to ensure the safety and security of the Guyanese workers.
All right, the final question here is from Tamika. Can the minister say if any survey or research will be conducted to statistically understand the impact that the COVID-19 has had on the labor market and the extent to which there has been unemployment?
Let me say this, Tamika. That's a good question, and I suspect the first thing we have to back up some with is understanding, even before COVID, what is the issue as regards the labor market, unemployment and underemployment. That's a matter that we have debated as a nation with no information. You know, people have their own numbers they throw into the pot. So I suspect we might have to review what the census figures. The last census was done since 2012, 8 years ago. We will have to see what is there and to develop, first understand what was, before we seek to put in place a mechanism to deal with what is, taking into consideration the economic downturn and the effects of the pandemic. We have one of the agencies or departments at the Ministry of Labor is the what we used to call long-term manpower,
National Recruitment and Manpower.
national recruitment. I don't think that they are serving the nation the way they should, and no fault of theirs. I have engaged these employees and they have serious deficiencies and difficulties. And I would have to ensure that that is retooled to do some of the things that Tamika is asking, because at the level of, they just have sketches of what is based on what they know. I suspect that at that level, the Ministry of Labor would have to have a conversation as to how we can put in place a strategy going forward to do a survey of the impact of COVID-19 and the economic downturn that has happened. Whilst we do all of that, you would understand that at the level of the government, the budget that we will be presenting just a couple of weeks from now will take into consideration the citizens and workers who have suffered because of the pandemic and the economic downturn. And as articulated by the Vice President, we will have in the budget several measures to mitigate against the impact in the short term. And we will have several measures to give support to workers. He has already outlined as a special group the health workers who are in the front line of fighting the pandemic. I suspect we have to have special programs for the elderly, for children, within the framework of the total social sector program of support, and to see how we can facilitate businesses to have people return back to work. All of those things, they have been said via the Vice President when he spoke to the media a couple of days ago. And so the budget package will determine many of these things, because I tell you, at the moment, I am tasked to establish or re-establish a Ministry of Labor. And presently I can't buy a chair. Presently I can't buy a window, I can't buy a door, because all of those are considered capital items. And until and unless you have a budget, those expenditures you cannot incur. And so I want the budget faster than I suspect most of my ministerial colleagues who already have facilities. I have none. I have been able to have help come from my colleague's minister. Minister Prasad has made available one of our building that is at the back of the Labor Department, and the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports, as he has been gracious to loan us the School of Music that is to the east of the present Labor Ministry / Labor Department that has existed. I have seen some people, you know, make comment on that decision, but I say this: running government is decision making. That is what it is. And I say this to people: I have no difficulty with people proposing and criticizing. But first, you must have an understanding holistically of the issue. And secondly, when you say we shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do that, or the government should, you must have a proposal also. You know, my grandmother used to say simple. When you attempt to take away bread, you must at least have biscuit or cassava bread. And anyone who seek to denigrate, desecrate, for whatever reason, government policy, without putting another proposal on the table, I see it as rabble-rousing. Because you cannot say, don't use an iPhone, and you don't tell me, use Samsung because this is better. You have to say something. Because the only thing I have before me is the iPhone. You understand? So I am saying going forward, the media, people in the public, the stakeholders, I have no difficulty with criticism. I would have no difficulty with you engaging me to share your views. But I'm saying to you, when a decision has been made, and you say that the decision is not one that you think is wholesome, you must have something to say. If not this, what else? If you don't have that, then how can we engage? Because I still have to resolve the problem. I still have to resolve housing 147 staff if we have the full complement of staff in the 6 departments. As I speak to you, of the 147, only 87 persons are there. So I have to find 60 staff members. And when I have to house 87, I have to solve that problem. And then I have to make provision to house 60 more that will come, because some of those positions are critical positions, senior positions. And then we have to go build departments that don't exist. And that will go up by the scores. So that is the issue we have before us. And so we have moved forward from where we were a week ago. At least we have 2 buildings. And the one that exists, so we would have 3 buildings in contiguous area there at Brickdam to establish the Ministry of Labor proper. And once the budget is passed and we have the necessary funds, we would seek urgently to ensure that those buildings are furnished properly, and to ensure that staffing, we have to, I suspect, advertise for several staff, senior and otherwise, to have them come in and to seek to establish this ministry proper. So let me say thank you very much for engaging me. I hope I have attempted to answer every question you have asked. And I would say this, that I'm sure you have my number. Any other thing that you need to clarify, you can call me, or you can make your own appointment to come have a conversation with me that I can explore and to give more thoughts on matters that I have raised today. But as I said when I started, and I want to end, there are three objectives. One, to ensure that we adequately train our people. That is capacity building. To ensure that our people well-being is taken care of. That is the whole issue of human development. How we engage housing to ensure we can house our people properly. How we engage health to ensure that healthcare facilities are made available to our workers, and importantly and finally, protection of the rights of workers. As I have said, under my watch, no company expatriate will come and establish modern-day plantations in Guyana. We have passed there 100 and something years ago, and we will not allow nobody to return us. Children of the indentured people, children of the indigenous people, and children of the slaves that came to Guyana. That we will not return there. I can give that commitment to the people of Guyana, and I will fight against any one or any set of people or any company who attempt to do that, and I will utilize the law that exists. And if I think that there should be more robust laws to protect our workers and employees, I will so recommend to the cabinet for consideration going forward. Thank you again very much.
And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Minister, thanks for being here.